every morning, a part of my routine and meditation is to go into my mind palace. And this is where I see all of the results that I'm producing as if I've already created them. Stanford did this study on their basketball team and said, hey, half of you in the off season, you guys get to shoot hoops, free throws. Half of you only get to do it in your mind. Guess who improved their free throw shot more in the off season? Those that could practice perfectly instead of those that practice with their body. And very, very similarly, in my visualizations, I'm occupying a time and space that is not real nor now, because I'm actually building evidence in my mind when I emotionally attach to a visualization as if it's been achieved. That next car, that next jet that I want to own, or the 28,000 square foot addition on my home that I'm just finishing right now, or the next humanitarian trip this fall to Guatemala for my 71 sex trafficked kids that we've saved, like whatever it is, I am occupying a part of the future as if it's now, and I'm celebrating it as if it's happened. And my brain is being trained every morning. That's what we did. And so when you get into the real life, it says, well, that's who we are.
Over 96.6% of people that view this podcast are not subscribed. So if you've got even a little bit of information or inspiration from this podcast, I please ask you to subscribe. Help me help more people. And let's get into the podcast. Kris Krohn, I am pleased to be speaking with you today. And I want to know, to start, what were some of the scripts, stories, beliefs that you held on to early on in your childhood that really carved out who you were?
Geez, James, we're gonna start there and go hard and fast, huh?
Oh, we're starting there.
Dude, I'll tell you, I think like a lot of people, what really surfaced for me were ideas like there's not enough money in the world. Money is scarce. It's hard to make. It's easy to go into debt, and it's hard to win. But on top of that, just personal beliefs. This overarching feeling of I'm not enough. This thing that says I need to keep striving for significance or winning. This voice of the ego that is trying so hard to be enough. And so, I would say that on the one hand, there was a part of me that just really, was just scared and nervous about, am I really going to win and succeed in life? And then there was another part of me that had some experiences that just awoke this indomitable beast inside that said, no matter what, I find a way. And all this confidence was also in there. So kind of some of the good and the bad.
I'm curious what that paradox looks like, because you're someone that's extremely obsessed, right? And from the moment when your wife came home and couldn't afford groceries to, there's so many pivotal moments in your journey. When was that when you really leaned into that obsession?
I think that when I let my best friend down, my wife of 4 months, and we didn't have food for groceries, and she ran out of the supermarket embarrassed because the check bounced. That for me was a moment where I'm like, okay, I feel small. I feel pathetic. I'm insecure. But at the same time, it was like, I will do whatever it takes to never have to feel this way again. And that was the start, because up until then, I was telemarketing, making less than $20,000 a year. I was going into credit card debt, and I felt already like a failure, even though I was a college kid. And that was the moment that changed everything. I basically said, all right, screw society's system and everything. There's nothing within the walls of college that will do anything other than career training. And I don't need career training. I need wealth training. And so I left college and basically found mentors that had made millions of dollars. And I said, you teach me. One of them, I showed up on his door at like 10 p.m. at night. He was frustrated that I had tracked him down in his address, slammed the door in my face, told me never to come back. But there were two others that couldn't turn me away. I wouldn't let them turn me away. And they inspired me to start my journey. And by the time I graduated college, I had built a portfolio of 25 homes. Those homes were paying me $12,000 a month passively. I didn't have to work for that money. And so when all my buddies were trying to find jobs just out of college, I quit my job and never had to have one ever again.
Yeah, 26, you achieved financial freedom. And from your first home in college to 25 units after college, it happens really quick. And I hired my first mentor when I was 17. I invested all the money I had in my bank account and more. And
which was how much, by the way?
About $8,000 to $10,000.
Yeah, that's impressive. So, dude, you were working it, you were making some money, and you threw it all down at 17. That's really impressive. Were your parents proud of you? Did they know, or were they upset?
I think it was just kind of like, I told my mom after the fact, and she was kind of like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Kind of thing. Right. Exactly. Like it's something that not in the field, you can't really understand how it makes sense. But honestly, when I was 17, like a lot of your work was a lot of the stuff that I was listening to and inspired by. And you and Brandon Turner were a lot of the people that wanted me or really inspired me to get into real estate. And so
Mm.
I'm curious, those few mentors that did help you out, what were some of the things that they really changed your perspective on to help you get to 25 units?
One of them taught me that debt is like the best thing. It's like my best friend. Like, you
Mhm.
want to have, Kris, as much debt as possible. And I was totally confused. I'm like, no, my mom and dad fought about credit card debt. He said, no, 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 no. We're not talking about bad debt that costs you money. I'm talking about, like, imagine, he said, look at my new boat that I just got with my dude Duramax 6-wheel, whatever. I'm like, dude, that's a sweet setup. He says, yeah, but I didn't pay for it. I'm like, oh, dude, who bought that for you? He says, my real estate did. I'm like, what do you mean? He said, well, I bought a house, and that house has $600 a month positive cash flow. That boat payment is $600 a month. So instead of buying a boat that goes down in value, depreciates, a liability essentially, he said I bought an asset that goes up in value and actually pays for my toys. So he says, I've got this great lifestyle. Look at everything you see me have, my 14,000 square foot house, my travel. All of that is paid for by assets. And assets are accumulated rapidly through acquiring debt. So, Kris, you want to have as much debt as you possibly can handle. And that was like a huge moment for me where I'm like, oh, don't be afraid of debt. Like, if it makes you money, then why wouldn't you want more of it?
Right. And you're at this point, you're buying a home a day and you're partnering with a lot of people, right? So
Yeah.
what do you find when clients come to you to work with you in the real estate sector in general? Where do you find that they go wrong? What are they not understanding? Yeah.
I got a niche, and on all of my social media, the 5 to 10 million views I get every single week, a lot of what I'm talking about is a reframe and a reconditioning of the idea of pay off a home and have a 401k.
Mhm.
Because listen, fifth grade math is sufficient to know that a 401k that on a 20-year average produces 4.2%, equivalent to what inflation is today, means you're making nothing on it, right? If your IRA is producing 6%, then it triples every 20 years. And I'm like, hey, do some basic math. You're not going to work for 100 years. You're going to work for 40 years. And if you work for 40 years, then your money triples every 20 years. Like, single digit ROI is not enough to amass wealth. You have to enter double digits. So for me, I'm like, listen, if you'll just take your retirement funds and you'll put it into real estate, and all I'm earning is a 25% ROI, I will outperform your retirement 27-1. By the way, on my last $2 billion worth of real estate, my last 1,000 homes now, I'm averaging 34% ROI. I am literally getting 108x to 1 on your 401k. And so that's like a smack in the face. The other one, though, that really messes with people in their mindset is I tell them, man, you should be bankrupting your house. You should be robbing every penny of equity out of it. Stop trying to pay that thing off. That's premature retirement. You don't have a passive income that is greater than your current lifestyle, so you can't afford to retire money. Your house is cheap money, 3%, 7%. You should be harvesting as much of that out as possible and using that to build wealth. And that's another one of those ideas that just, it's like nails on the chalkboard, but it also belongs to a generation that is financially already dead. And so fortunately, there's a lot of 30, 40-year-olds that will listen and wake up and realize, oh, geez, like in my life, accumulating my first few hundred grand is hard. I got to trade all my time for that money. I got to find a way to get some performance on this. And so this is the other idea my mentors taught me, which is you don't make money. You don't trade time for money. You do that in the beginning so that you can then put your money to work and have it work for you to get you your time back. And man, I've achieved financial freedom several times because after I do, I go back in and I find a new thing and get into private equity or do, 1,000 more homes or something. Usually it's centered around helping other people build wealth. I can't seem to escape it. And it's all based on helping them cultivate this mindset about money that I just don't know why it wasn't taught. And I still don't know. Like, the information's out there. I can't believe how financially dumb people are.
I am right with you. When I started listening to yours and so many other just profound humans on the internet, I thought, why am I learning things that I will absolutely never use in my life? And one thing for you, when you were about to hit 500 grand, or actually you hit 500 grand, you were going to hit a million. We have these limits that we place on ourselves that,
Oh
oh,
yeah.
it's a million and it's such a massive thing. Like the first 100 grand is so difficult for people. Why do we have those limits on ourselves?
Well, I look at it this way. I'm in college. I made 18,000 my first year. I only had 9 months on my first
Mhm.
W-2 year. And I remember just thinking, wow, I was probably tracking for $25,000, knowing that the average person is making 50,000 a year. And even though I'm a college kid where I'm not supposed to necessarily be making career money, This job had a commission component. I saw dudes making hundreds of thousands a year. So I'm like, you know what? I just said, you know what? I know that $25,000 a year, that is not where my financial barometer is supposed to be. And I also know that I'm still going into debt. So I probably need to make 30 or 40 grand a year if I want to pay for myself through college without going to debt, and also just pay for life and live.
Yeah.
And so I made a goal to double my income. And because doubling would have still put me just below the average adult income, I'm like, okay, I know that I'm not 30, 40, or 50 years old. I know that I'm still kind of a kid, just barely adult, but I believe that I can at least make what the average person makes. This job will give me that potential. I just got to get better at it. And so that year, I believed every day for 365 days that I was going to double my income. And at the end of the year, I made 50 grand, and I did. And it's not because of what I did. People get caught up on the how, and they got caught up on the strategy. But I believe that everything that we're getting is a byproduct of belief. So when they say you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. It's your thinking that makes it so. I believed and never doubted that I could double my income. So after a year of practice, when it came time to set goals for the next year, I'm like, well, it's weird. I only know how to believe in doubling.
Yeah.
And that next year it was $250,000. And then I believed in doubling. So the year after was $500,000. And when I got to $500,000, I did find this invisible limit that I wasn't aware of. I had bought enough, I can buy enough real estate in a year that I can increase my net worth millions of dollars. But making and taking home $1 million in my mind was altogether different. And I'm like, oof, like when I made that goal to double my income, to go from $500,000 to $1 million, I kind of went through the motions like, yeah, we can do that. But in my mind, I'm like, bro, so much pressure. You can't make $1 million in a year. And sure enough, that year I did, and I made $500,000. And the next year, and the next year, and the next year. This went on for a few years before I finally said, okay, I get the lesson. If I believe that I'm going to double my income, I will. And if I doubt I'm going to double my income, I won't. And so I was at a Tony Robbins event. I had this crazy breakthrough experience with him one-on-one, and made this monster shift in my mindset. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, making $1 million a year. Are you kidding me? Like, that's so easy. And that year I made $2 million. And then the year after I made $10 million. So we do like what we get in life is not a byproduct of how hard we work. It's a byproduct of our psychology and what we believe, which is why when I want something I haven't produced before, I ask, do I have any limits that are getting in the way? Because if there are, I need to find them first. I need to destroy them. And then I can actually have a possibility of getting the thing that I want.
And that's the exact reason I wanted you on the show, because this podcast is really talking about unlearning a lot of the beliefs, because we hold on to beliefs that we didn't even know why we took them on, right? So you talk about belief breakthrough a lot, and it's like the question that you ask every single morning, and you've done a lot of seminars and worked with hundreds of thousands of people over with your socials and everything. What does that look like in a practical sense?
Yeah. So I invite everyone early in the morning to have some type of powerful routine. There's people that have a routine and there's people that don't. And for me, if you don't have a morning routine that is designed to wake you up, cultivate energy, feed your body, your mind, your muscles, your heart, your everything, if you don't have that, then you're living a less conscious life. And that means that you probably sleep as long as you can, you have breakfast, and you go to work. And then you kind of robotically go through the motions. And today you're going to make decisions very similar to what you made yesterday. When I find a person like that, I can almost predict with just perfect clarity 20 years from now where you're going to be. And anyone else could. I'm not a prophet. You're literally just going to be in the same situation. And you'd like to think, no, Kris, I'm going to 10X. Everything's going to get gooder. I'm like, no, things are not going to get gooder, because there's a problem that you're not introducing change into your mindset. If you don't change your mindset, then you can't make things better. So my belief breakthrough process, just a small part of my morning routine, is every morning I'll ground. That means shut off my brain, deep breath in, get connected to higher self. And I ask this one question: what is the number one limiting belief holding me back? And if I'm working on my marriage, what is the number one limiting belief holding me back in my marriage? If it's money, what is the number one limiting belief holding me back in money? If it's my health, what is the number one limiting belief holding me back in my health? And so I direct that question. If we're calm and we listen, within 5 to 10 seconds, it's going to pop up. You don't believe that you can do it. You're too committed to being unhappy instead of actually producing more happiness in your marriage. You don't believe that you can lose that gut. And so these limiting beliefs are not true. They're just the things that we treat as true. And if there's one thing I've learned in life, and if I had to time machine back 20 years and give myself like a super valuable mentor lesson, it would be this most important lesson. Whatever you believe is true, you will make true. In other words, your brain will bias to find evidence of it. So if you believe that you're bad at math and yet you're trying to be a real estate investor that has to crunch numbers, I can promise you that you're either going to get in on the wrong deals or you'll be too afraid to try to do deals because you don't understand how to calculate something as simple as an ROI. Literally, it's fifth grade math. So just the idea of I'm not good at math keeps you from trying, demotivates you from trying. And 5 years goes by, and literally you had everything it took to make all this money in real estate, and you didn't do it because of this one little thing. Well, I'm here to find every morning the chink in my armor because it's costing me probably millions of dollars. And I'm going to find it. I will destroy it. And I'm going to replace it. So if I find a belief I'm not good at math, then I'm going to create a new belief that I am. And you might be thinking, but I don't have evidence for that. I'm like, you will. If you believe, you'll find evidence for it. And that's inevitably what happens is that, every time I raise the bar on something in my life, I'm believing, of course, I'm believing in something that I haven't done before. So yeah, I have no evidence. And here's what a weak person does, James. A weak person says, well, if I haven't done before, then I can't do it. And I'm like, oh, cool. Your future is a byproduct of your past. Well, welcome to the suckiest, most lame, boring life, because whatever the last decade was is going to be the next decade. The people will rotate. The names and faces and the dates will change. Dude, the results, they're locked in stone because your brain is fixed. It's locked in stone. So we have to become malleable, and breakthrough is a simple process of every morning just asking, where's my blind spot? What is my limiting notion holding me back? And I'm going to replace it. And then I'm going to look for evidence of its truth. And guess what? You're off to the races. Now you have a malleable mindset, a learning mindset, a growth mindset. And now we can hack through those limits.
So much here that I absolutely love. This is just all of the things that I just love speaking about immensely. And the belief that we hold on to is going to determine our behavior. It's going to determine our results in our life. And that's exactly why that cycle stays as it is, because we never change the root. And that is the beliefs, right?
And on top of that, it's not just the belief work. It's, when people tell me that they have aggressive goals they haven't achieved, I always ask, what's your morning routine?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why is because what we do every day determines our destiny, because it's just what you said. Our thoughts form actions and behaviors, and our behaviors ultimately dictate our choices that we'll stick with and ultimately land us to wherever it is that we're heading. And so, for example, if you hang out with people that are overweight because you're overweight, that's the most unconscious and comfortable thing to do. It's like, I'm overweight. I'm going to hang out with people that are overweight. Then I don't have to feel self-conscious about whatever. I'm like, cool. But let me guess, when you hang out, you guys are going to go to Munchies. When you guys are going to celebrate, you're going to celebrate with food, not with words or joy or feelings. Like, you're in a pattern. And I'm not doing any fat shaming here. I'm just simply like showing people that we get what we think about the most. And so if you want to get different, you have to think different. You have to hang out with different people. So start becoming aware of what you want. It's like what you did at 17. You're like, I'm a kid and I've got $8,000 and I'm going to spend it on someone that can give me knowledge that I'm not going to find in college. And then you found it, and look at the results that you're producing in your life. That's the truth for all of us.
It's the power of proximity. When you surround yourself with people that are where you'd like to be, it doesn't seem like it's such a monstrous mountain away. It really is not that. But then that's what you've experienced as well. I think mentoring is the one cheat code in life, because it's the thing that you can either spend time, which is fleeting every second, or you can spend money, which is being printed every second. And I'm always going to choose that route.
And I'm afraid that when we say mentoring, that it's starting to fall on deaf ears, because people are like, oh my gosh, I've heard that from everyone. I'm like, yeah, but do you know what it means? Like, I want to hike Everest. So I have a buddy who is hiking Everest in 3 years. He's hiked 6 of the 7 top mountains on every continent. And he's the most prepared person I know that I can do that journey with. And then I got to find a Sherpa that is like summited 200 times. So I got to find then that expert, because I am definitely not going up with first year Sherpa that's like, I'm making a name for myself. I'm like, cool, you can do that on somebody else. I'm going to hang out with the dude that made his name 25 years ago and has never lost a soul on that mountain, right? So that proximity is a really, really powerful principle, and you got to be reaching for the people that have achieved the most. And it's the most uncomfortable thing you can do, but it does rapidly impact everything.
No, it doesn't. I was the youngest person in the coaching program of over thousands of coaches, and I seen everyone else had imposter syndrome just as I did. So it didn't have anything to do with my age, didn't have anything to do with it. But when you surround yourself with those kind of people, it just it just becomes normal. And
Yeah.
like you said with the your morning routine, you're someone that sleeps 4 to 6 hours a day. So how do you have all this energy? I'm just
Mm.
curious.
Well, first of all, there's life has given us all these old wives' tales. And you need to discount every one of them and assume that every one of them is a lie. The
Yeah.
only thing that matters is what works for you. For example, I won't tell people that they should sleep 4 to 6 hours a week. I just know that by the time I'm going to be 140 years old, I know that. I've studied the futurists. I'm taking care of my body. I'm putting everything in my body that I'm supposed to, other than barring, an act of God to, some stupid choice. I'm going to live for a very long time. By the time I'm 100 years old, I will have lived 2 decades awake more than the average person.
Mhm.
And for me, part of that byproduct is that I've tested the model of sleep. I will sleep 4 to 5 hours a night, every night, Monday through Friday. I'll sleep in maybe 6 hours on Saturday. And then on Sunday, I'll sleep as long as I can. Sometimes it's 10 hours until my body is fully reset. And then I restart that cycle. And, I've got the doctors looking at my blood work under the hood, and I am optimal on everything across the chart. So there's no indication or signs of cortisol levels rising or anything from what others would consider lacking sleep. I used to need more sleep, and then I learned that a part of sleep needs are actually belief driven. I altered my belief structure. Now my body gets what it needs, not what I think that it needs. And that works for me. And so my morning routine starts at 4 a.m. and it includes all sorts of things. It includes meditation, working out my heart on cardio, weightlifting with trainers and coaches, time with my wife in the morning, time with my kids, belief breakthrough, reading books. And all of that is designed by 9 a.m. That 5 hour routine is designed to just get me ready for the day so that I can literally go out and crush it. And when a lot of people are like, dude, Kris, you have some pretty extraordinary results. All of these companies, and you've done a couple $1 billion worth of real estate and 6,500 projects, and look at what you're doing on social media. And when they look at all that, they're like, man, like either God spent extra time on you, which is not true, or there's like some hack of how you're getting there. And for me, my morning routine is my hack. And what it does is it energizes me. So when you say, well, Kris, where does all this energy come from? That morning routine freaking jacks me up. I don't take any caffeine. I don't do coffee. I don't do stimulants. Like our body is a pharmacy that is capable of producing all of the euphoria, DMT. You go through all of the different, dopamine, serotonin, GABA, and
Mhm.
all I'm doing is finding it, intentionally igniting it, and getting all that I need to sustain me for every one of my inspired choices.
Yeah, one thing that I absolutely agree with you on is that sick is almost always a mindset. It's always mindset driven. I haven't got sick in years, and so much of that is going down to the fact that I don't think about being sick. I don't try to attract sickness into my life. What are the morning routine such a massive role in it? What else do you do in your day to day life, or like habits that you inquire that really help you not only just to stay out of being sick, but live to 140, like really have that kind of mindset?
Well, first of all, I try to be very careful on how much I use my brain.
Mm,
There's a lot of us that are operating our life from a mind body. And I used to have my brain turned on from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to bed. And a lot of entrepreneurs like me, they claim that they have a hard time falling asleep. And it's because their brain won't stop working. I've got office hours for my brain, just like I have work hours. Like 25 hours is like my ideal hours per week, 30 maybe on some weeks, but that's kind of my max. When
mhm.
I start allocating more time to work beyond that, I actually come out of balance and out of alignment. Similarly, my mind, like I refuse to use my mind for critical analysis, logistical planning, or any type of reasoning outside of 9 to 5, which means that during my entire morning routine, that's not time for critical thinking. And after
Mm.
5 p.m., like I'm really honing in on my family time, me. And the brain keeps us so disconnected from our heart because the brain's goal is not to be happy. The brain's goal is to think. It's 70,000 thoughts a day. But if you take a look at what will matter most, whether I live to be 140 years old or I live only one more day, the real question is, did I live on purpose enough that I could live a life that I really loved? And meaning in life is not determined by thinking. It's not determined by the size of your bank account. It's not determined by anything, I believe, other than how connected we are to ourselves and other people. That's where memories can be made, right? Like I took my daughter when she was 5 years old to Disneyland. And I was going to be this amazing dad. And she was still kind of in the terrible twos, even as a 5 year old. And we did all the trips and everything. And we ran ourselves ragged and we did all the rides and had an overnighter and came home the next morning. And I got home exhausted. I'm like, oh my gosh, like single dad, rock star, killed it, crushed Disneyland. But did I connect with my daughter? And that night when I tucked her in her own bed, I looked in her eyes and I said, Liesel, I see your spirit. And immediately her eyes, she choked up and I could see them welling up with tears. And then she said, Daddy, I see your spirit too. And in that moment, that took less than a minute, I achieved more connection than I did in Disneyland for the whole day and a half. And so as human beings, part of these hacks of how I use my brain is my reminder that it's not designed to create deep emotional and meaningful connection or memories with human beings. And so one of my hacks is I limit my brain because Tony Robbins says, in your head, you're dead. And I think that's actually a pretty good motto for life. And so I try to, and by the way, I don't need it to use it very much to critically analyze opportunities, look at the opportunity cost of scenarios. And I find a lot more enjoyment using it a lot less and focusing on other things that matter more.
Yeah, family seems to be a really massive pillar of your life in itself. You always make time for it. One thing that you've spoken about is joy arbitrage, and you have this goal of becoming a trillionaire at one point. It seems like you're closing on a billion at some point. But how do you kind of manage those two of prioritizing today and living for today while also trying to shoot for such massive goals?
There's two things that we are capable of doing in duality. Every morning, a part of my routine and meditation is to go into my mind palace. And this is where I see all of the results that I'm producing as if I've already created them. Mm-hmm. Stanford did this study on their basketball team and said, hey, half of you in the off season, you guys get to shoot hoops, free throws. Half of you only get to do it in your mind. Guess who improved their free throw shot more in the off season? Those that would practice perfectly instead of those that practice with their body. And very, very similarly, in my visualizations, I'm occupying a time and space that is not real nor now, because I'm actually building evidence in my mind when I emotionally attach to a visualization as if it's been achieved. That next car, that next jet that I want to own, or the 28,000 square foot addition on my home that I'm just finishing right now, or the next humanitarian trip this fall to Guatemala for my 71 sex trafficked kids that we've saved, like whatever it is, I am occupying a part of the future as if it's now, and I'm celebrating it as if it's happened. And my brain is being trained every morning. That's what we did. And so when you get into the real life, it says, well, that's who we are. And then it seeks those opportunities out. But then I'm a real human being with everyone else. I don't tell you I'm a billionaire, that I've achieved a result that I haven't, but I allow myself to live as if I have, to collect the evidence, and then actively during the day, open my eyes and say, now let's find the opportunities, the matching vibration to that visualization, the people, the steps, the motions that will then call those things into creation.
I love it. That's been such a massive role for me after I started listening to Joe Dispenza when I was 17 as well. It was like this realization of I am not who I think I am, and so much deeper than that. And I wish that was, again, taught in school. One question I always love to ask authors, you've wrote plenty of books. What book has taught you the most about yourself?
The one that I actually just came out with 2 weeks ago is called Time Machine. Mm-hmm. And it's a decision-making book. And it looks a little bit like a time management book, but really it says most humans, the byproduct of your entire life really comes down to two words: yes and no, right? Like, think about the person that feels inspired to mentor with someone, but it costs $50,000. And so they choke on fear and say no. They just completely obliterated the trajectory of where their life was supposed to go. This happens all the time. I'm dating this girl and my heart is saying yes, but my heart's been hurt in the past. So I'm going to say no, and I'm not going to propose. And then later it took too long and we broke up. Dude, you screwed yourself over because you hadn't learned a lesson that you thought was mistrust of others when it was mistrust of yourself. So in life, we are constantly like making the wrong decision. We should say yes, we say no. We should say no, we say yes. And this book is all about how do you have the hindsight of what matters most to go on a winning streak of yes when you're supposed to say yes and no when you're supposed to say no. That will lead you to your most perfect life. That is going to lead to your best outcome. That is going to lead to your highest and best results. And so the book basically teaches 5 lenses of how you do that, because most of us are entrenched in rational thought. It's like, well, does it make sense? Is it logical? Does it financially make sense? And I'm like, do you realize that those are thinking considerations and your brain is going to screw you over because the brain doesn't understand the ultimate outcome of your life nor your goal. So the book shares all the other considerations, and it's ultimately 5. And I produce a worksheet and I tell people, if you can balance out these 5 things when you're making a life decision, there's a really good shot you're going to say yes when you're supposed to, and you're going to say no when you're supposed to. And now you can go on a tear. Now you can go on a winning streak and slay it.
Yeah, the decisions that we make always, most of the time, come from our mind, and that's usually the one thing that's going to hold us back from making the decision because it's rational, like you said.
Yeah, well, and we're not our mind. Like, I'm not my body. Like, I'm not my emotions. And I think one of the first steps of waking up to, out of the apocalypse where everyone's just kind of zombie mode is we have to start realizing who we are and who we're not. You're not your body. So why are you feeling so ashamed of what your body is? Your body is a stewardship. Start using it like one, get it in shape and leverage it for your good and get it to produce energy for you. You're not your mind. You're not your thoughts. Like, your thoughts are something everyone's having, but look at how dark some of your thoughts are, how weird or strange. I'm like driving on the road, I'm on a bridge, and I just have that thought. What would happen if I yanked really hard on the street? Dude, that's not higher thinking. That's the brain wearing and doing its thing. So it's not the highest form of self. And so just because you have a thought, don't confuse yourself by thinking you are your thought. That's just a tool, just like your body is a tool. And just like your feelings, some of us get caught up in an emotional whirlwind, like, I'm feeling fear, I'm afraid. I'm like, no, you're not afraid. You're experiencing fear. Oh, I'm happy. You made me happy. No, they didn't make you happy. What you did is you chose a response to what you experienced from them, and then you chose to feel happy from that experience. I can show you someone else that chooses sadness from Christmas, right? Like, you're not your feelings, but they are clues to your limitations or your empowering beliefs. So when we wake up and start realizing that we're not our mind, that we're not our emotions, and that we're not our body, then we can start asking the real question. Who are you? And when you get clear on what that is, then we stop being seduced by the world's marketing messages, pursuing the things in life that don't matter, going after, mansions and jets and cars. Those things are all beautiful. But if you think they are the end game, when you get them, you'll be disappointed, because they in of themselves are things that take a long time to earn. And then you'll look back at all the time that you wasted, because the journey of who you become in the process is actually more important than what you get out of life.
So very true. I see our mind as like ChatGPT. When we ask the bad questions, we're going to get bad answers. If we ask better questions, we're going to get better answers. The challenge is that many of us are unconsciously asking the questions that we don't want answers to.
Yeah.
There's one last question I ask every guest, and my question for you is, what belief are you currently unlearning?
I used to believe that I had achieved, this is about a year ago, I felt that I really had achieved everything that a person could really want, right? Like, I've been financially free for 18 years. So I've traveled the world, and I've been to some of the most bizarre, tiny places most humans will never tour. And I've had a chance to meet so many different cultures and people, and I've made insane memories with my family. And I feel blessed. I've basically been able to drive every car I've ever wanted, and owning a couple of jets gives me the privilege of reducing time and just making the most of life. And I've learned how to be really happy. So on the one hand, like, that's how I came into 2023. The last year of my life, I've been learning how much I don't know and how supernatural life really can be. And I'm starting to push the limits on the metaphysical. And I find that there's a lot of things that were important to me that just don't matter anymore. Truly, truly slaying the ego, releasing our death grip on materialism. And it's not even to be replaced with minimalism. It's just to not care about the things that will never really matter, and to really find the deep meaning. Like right now, this conversation, because of the question you asked, however many people watch this, if they make it this far and they hear me speak, I'm hoping that this moment I'm meta communicating something that will cause you to rethink your goals that might take decades of pursuit, but may be actually the wrong pursuit. And so what am I unlearning? I feel like I got to the end of everything worldly someone could want, and now I'm trying to unlearn all of it.
Wow. I love it. Amazing way to end. I know we could talk for hours, and I hope to have you on the podcast again in the future. All of your links, of course, will be in the show notes, but where would you like to direct people?
Yeah, if you want to get access to some of my books, or if you want a free wealth game plan, a multimillionaire's perspective on your life, or attend one of my events, go to freewealthgift.com. freewealthgift.com. And I got all sorts of freebies there, freewealthgift.com. And then my name, it's spelled weird with double K, Kris Krohn. And if you look me up on your favorite social media platform, whatever it is, you're going to find me there.